Hi there, it's Dr. Ellen Love Coach, relationship, love and intimacy coach. And I just wanted to come on and make a little video about something that is very prevalent at the moment and is close to my own heart. I am experiencing it myself, and that is what to do in your romantic, long-term committed relationship if you are at completely different spectrums in terms of the current pandemic situation. And this also filters through, we're now sort of 7 to 8 months into this, and it's filtering through into politics and our whole world view actually. In the space of the past 7 months, many people have started to independently do a lot of research and are becoming more and more convinced of and passionate about their specific view, their standpoint. And if you know me and my husband personally, or you follow both of us on social media, for example, if you did or you do, you will know that we are at very different ends of this spectrum. We're in very different places. We've actually got diametrically opposed views as to what is going on the world stage right now. So I wanted to offer you some pointers, and I've got about 10 points here that I'm going to try to get through quite quickly in terms of how you can navigate this in your marriage or in your relationship. So, we're increasingly locked down with our spouse as well, with our partner. We are in a very intense situation together in our home, and that adds to this intensity that is going on outside. So just to say, first of all, just to acknowledge that we are in very strange times, and it's important that you and your partner acknowledge that things are not normal, okay? So what I wanted to say is that crucially I wanted to start off by saying, and I'm going to just dive straight into the deep end here, it is more important than ever at this time to nurture and nourish the culture of unity over division, okay? That's ground zero. That's the number one feeling and aim and objective that you want to be holding here. Because lower density energies, whatever you may believe them to be, whether you believe that lower density energies are actually an organized group of people who have a specific agenda, shall we say, or whether you just know instinctively that lower density energies are feelings of gloom and doom and depression and anxiety and conflict and fighting. So you can even see there where I'm going with this, that lower density energies thrive on division. That's what they want. They want conflict. They want division. Or division creates these lower density energies. You can look at it a number of different ways. So we can look at that as, of course, in the American election at the moment, we can look at that as Trump versus Biden. How divisive is that? Very, very split. And it's the same as black versus white racially, religious divides. I'm from Northern Ireland, Catholic versus Protestant, and even men versus women, the old versus the young. Anything that's diametrically opposed like that is divisive, okay? It's them versus us. So we want to get away from that. Like, no matter what is happening, we want to be moving away from that collectively, but it has to start at home, personally, inside, of course, but then in your committed marriage, in your relationship or marriage. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is, point number one, keep focused on your big vision as a couple together. keep focused on what life you want to live together. You know, what are your unified goals? What is your big goal as a family, as a couple? Keep focused on those and away from the minutiae of what's happening on the world stage and to do with the pandemic. Okay, so how do you want to feel when you're together as well? Like, what are the attributes that so you can do this practically, as in, well, what are our goals? Are we trying to buy a house? You know, is somebody working on their business? Do we want to redecorate the living room? Are we trying to go running together? You know, what, just these goals, like practical, actionable goals, but also how do you want to feel when you're together? So what way do you want to feel when you're with your husband or wife? Do you want to feel relaxed, at peace, adventurous, exciting, passionate? And then look for situations to bring up those feelings. What, you know, takeaway food do you enjoy together? What food do you enjoy to home cook together? You know, what courses could you take together? What about, you know, activities that you both enjoy together? Okay, and that also includes physical intimacy. You know, make sure, and this is something that I coach my clients on, physical intimacy. Make sure that you set aside time for that connection. Okay, and that includes holding hands, hugging, right through to sexual intimacy. So make sure that you're still having time for that, even if you're very much in different places when it comes to these belief systems that are very current and intense at the moment. So the next point I wanted to make is that while this may seem like a life or death situation, in your view, it's life or death. For some people, you know, they believe that we're in the midst of a global takeover. You know, there's a new world order trying to be implemented, that our actual human liberties and rights are being taken away, you know, and yada, 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 right down that rabbit hole. Some of us believe that very, very strongly. And then some of us also believe, and these are in the cases of two different, you know, the two partners in the relationship, that we're in the midst of a global pandemic and millions of lives are being lost. People are dying of coronavirus, and that, you know, the government and the healthcare professionals and the scientists are all doing their absolute best to keep everybody safe, but it's a kind of a situation that's out of our control. Okay, so those are the two very, you know, black and white and polar positioned beliefs. So these do feel, these actually are life and death situations in some ways, but is your life imminently in danger? And you need to choose your, you know, are you going to go down that road? Because the more you go down that road and you believe this is a life or death situation, you may find that you would have to leave the marriage potentially. But are there ways, if you're, you know, facing a lot of resistance and kickback from your partner, if you want to go to demonstrations, if you want to go and be a real strong activist, okay, that's a very tricky situation. If you want to take it right to the line, you may find that you have to leave the marriage or the relationship. But my hope is that it doesn't come to that, especially if, the thing is, if you had a good relationship before this started, it's going to be challenged. If you had a bad relationship before it started, it's going to be even more challenged. So where you are right now in your marriage is probably a pretty good indication of where you were before this started, if you know what I mean. And there can be an element of make or break, but it doesn't have to be that extreme. Dr. John Gottman from the Gottman Institute, he has concluded that 69% of relationship conflict is about perpetual problems that never go away. Okay, so this is another example. You may never agree on this. But that, when you think about it, may very well be the case of numerous other repeating issues that come up in your marriage prior to this pandemic, this global emergency. that are unsolvable. And the idea is that we want to think in terms of managing rather than resolving. That's really important. You want to manage it and not resolve it. It's not about having the perfect relationship or marriage. It's about getting through these challenges together. And you may fantasize about, oh, I really wish I was with a partner who just agreed with me and we could be taking this on the world together right now. But that's not where you are. And if you were in another relationship with somebody else, you'd be having all kinds of other difficulties. Okay? So the next point that I wanted to make is we have to allow space for our partner to see things differently than we do. And according to quantum physics, there two versions of reality actually can occur at the same time. So we can have two very contradictory beliefs and truths and realities existing at the same time. And we should not make our partner wrong, even if we know they are wrong. We should not and cannot make them wrong. It's entirely possible to hold two diametrically opposed ways of seeing things and for both people to be right. The next point I wanted to make is you must stop trying to convince your partner that he or she is wrong. It's a waste of time and energy, and it's hurtful. And when you reach like this major sticking point where you're like both at loggerheads and you know that it's about to spiral, you have to take personal responsibility to stop and to be able to breathe and say, look, I love you too much to fight with you about this, and we will have to agree to disagree. And then you have to take personal responsibility and leave the conversation, whether you're having a text conversation, whether you're having a face-to-face conversation, you have to take responsibility. And if your partner keeps on and on and on, you just have to keep reiterating and saying, look, I really don't want to talk about this anymore. I love you too much to fight with you. I know the way this is going to go. We're just going to have to agree to disagree. Okay? The next point is that you can agree together. If you have two mature people should and could and can agree to talk in a way that's like a think tank, but it's not a think tank. It's more like from your heart, where you're able to say, look, this is how I'm really feeling about this, and you can say, I'm scared because I think this, this, and this, and the other person can share their feelings as well. But it has to be a complicit agreement that there's going to be no criticism, no judgment, no I told you so's, no fixing energy, no lecturing. It has to be a really clear agreement that you're just literally going to air your feelings with each other. That can be tricky. If you feel it's starting to spiral, then you have to take the initiative and say, look, I feel we've achieved everything we can from this. Let's move on now, do something else. And then the other point here is it's very important to know when to not talk about things. We have been taught as women especially, and more so men, you need to talk about your feelings all the time, especially in relationships. You have to talk about everything. As a woman, you've got to express, I felt like this when you did this, and I feel like this when you do this, and I feel. You cannot possibly express your feelings all the time, and neither should you, because you're going to flood your partner then. It's literally called flooding. You're going to flood them with your emotions, flood them with your feelings, flood them with every single thing that passes through your mind. So, and a lot of these principles and structures I'm talking about now are absolutely applicable throughout your marriage, even if there wasn't a global emergency situation happening, okay? So the next point I wanted to get to, and I'm going quite fast because I don't really want to go over 20 minutes, is as a woman especially, you've got to allow yourself to be soft. You've got to tune into the humanity of your partner. You've got to be able to remember who they really are, who they were when you married them, what it is that you fell in love with them about. You've got to tune into the humanity of your partner. It's very easy to suddenly start to think, oh my God, my spouse has turned into a Trump supporter. She must be a right-wing Nazi. Or to think, oh my God, my husband doesn't understand what is going on in this situation. He's obviously a programmed brainwashed sheep. And it is possible to even call each other these things, okay? If you're really going to go into this low level, third dimensional, divisive conflict energy, okay? And that's a dark, egoic energy. So you want to be constantly tuning into their humanity. You know, what were the things that you fell in love with them for? What is beautiful about them? What about the poetry that they wrote for you? Or how they sang your baby to sleep and held your hand when you were giving birth, or, you know, make you a cup of coffee in the morning, or the time you saw them cry about something. You know, tune into that humanity all the time, as much as possible. And I would even say, you know, I would probably, if we were working together, I'd be saying, you know, we want to write lists of gratitude, lists of appreciation, lists of what these traits and characteristics are that you love about your partner. And you'd want to be doing that as well, you know, on a regular basis. So I'm just saying, so yes, and that leading on just to what I was saying there, is that I do teach very much, my teachings with my clients are very much to do with feminine and masculine energy relationship models from a woman's perspective, although I am going to be starting to work with men as well. From this perspective, okay, one of the most valuable gifts you offer your husband is respect. And you can 100% respect your husband or your partner's perspective without having to agree with them. So in my programs, we go into this in a lot of depth, but it is possible that you can 100% respect your partner's opinion without agreeing with them. And from a male perspective, while men crave respect, women cherish being cherished and protected. I mean, obviously we both want all of these things, but I go into that in more depth if you would be working with me. But, you know, a woman, you can cherish, look to ways you can cherish and feel protective of your wife as well, even if you disagree with her, and you know, so, but you can 100% respect your partner, respect your husband's perspective without agreeing with him. And I'm going to wrap things up just by saying that no matter where you fall in the spectrum between pandemic or plandemic or scamdemic, one thing that we can all agree on is love, peace, and unity is what every human being wants. That's where they want to exist, in a place of love, peace, unity, abundance, joy, happiness, ease, relaxation, creativity, expression, beauty. So you've got to be that change that I know it's a cliche, but you've got to be that change that you want to see in the world, in your marriage. If you're fighting and arguing and convincing and blaming and stropping and huffing, and you know, that is never going to create the culture that you want to have in your marriage. You must constantly seek out the light, the love in that other person and their goodness, and don't let this very dark conflict energy that is around at the moment, this fear, conflict, violence, anger, blame, judgment, name calling, do not allow that to take hold in your marriage. You must find your love bubble with your partner, the sweet spot with your partner, and live there as often as possible. It's love and unity, not division. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, and I did rattle through it really quickly. So if you want to, please do reach out to me on my social media pages, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn, if you would like to work with me further on any of these topics. Thank you very much.